Hey guys, so these are just the 3 last pair of boots that I've owned. 2 pairs of Docks and then my current boots, which are Red Wings. I'm just going to go over kind of some of the differences in the experience I've had with each of these pairs of boots, and I'm also going to clean and polish these Red Wings for the first time since buying them and kind of see how they've weathered the first month or so of ownership. These are Doc Martens. I'm not actually sure how old they are. I don't know what model they are. I think they're fairly old. Pretty classic kind of 6 eyelet design. Pretty nondescript, but very Doc. They did have these little pull tabs, I don't know what you'd call them. They did have these things on. I think they were a lot closer in color to these as well when I got them. Somebody in my family, I can't remember who it was, actually found these used, I believe, at a thrift store and tried wearing them for a while or wore them for a while. I can't remember the story, but somehow I ended up adopting these. So I've had these shoes well over 10 years, I think. Probably at least 10 years. I can't remember, I might be exaggerating. I might have got these as a teenager. But I've had these probably at least 10 years. I know they were the only pair of shoes I had when I lived in Vancouver when I was going to school over there. So I kind of did everything in these shoes, including things that they're really not designed for. You know, lots of hiking and playing soccer and stuff. More recently, just because these are sort of my secondary pair, I've tended to wear them places that I wasn't wearing my nicer boots, which at the time was these, which meant, you know, they were even in more mud and snow and kind of wet, swampy conditions, or just when I was, you know, doing work where I thought I might get paint or something on them. But, you know, up until very recently, I was treating them as best I could and, you know, just regularly cleaning and treating them. These have they're covered with, it looks like hay right now. I'm trying to remember what I was doing last with these. I think these boots are probably old enough that they may have been manufactured when Doc Martens made all of its boots in England. I certainly think these ones probably were made in England. They just seem of that vintage and certainly of that quality. Basically, in terms of wear and tear, these have weathered incredibly well for how long I've owned these and how much I wore them. It's pretty outstanding, and besides the usual, you know, polishing and stuff, I haven't done anything to these. No repairs, no stitching. I haven't resoled them or anything. New inserts. I think I've got you know, like Converse insoles in there and no insoles in here. But even the tread, you can see, has held up pretty incredibly well. They may have been resold, you know, shortly before I got them, but they certainly were not new boots even when I got them. This is where my lack of boot anatomy is going to show. I used to know some of these terms, but the kind of reinforcement along the eyelets on the inside here is all cracking up and broken, which was actually really painful sometimes because also the tongue here is just sort of shriveled up and out of place. So sometimes these would dig into my ankles. That was really the only issue of discomfort. Obviously I've relaced them a bunch of times, and the only major issue in terms of stitching now, the stitching sort of is worn off here. I don't know if you can tell, but I can put my finger right through on that side, on that line of stitching. Everywhere else, the smaller stitching is fine. This is the major issue, I think, on both shoes. It's just actually parting right away from the sole. Normally, because the leather's all still there and all in one piece, you could get this resoled. But unfortunately, these shoes are just old enough, and I think I wore them in wet conditions enough, that the leather itself is actually starting to crack. Obviously on the toe, all the sort of outer, you know, what do you call it, like the coating on the outside of the leather is worn off, but it's also actually peeling off here, and that's pretty unusual for, you know, how much kind of oil and stuff and treatment these have, it's just starting to peel away like paper. Whereas on the lower portions where it probably saw more water, it's actually starting to crack. I brought these to an independent shoe repair place right before I got these and asked if they thought it might be worth me getting them repaired. And they basically said no, no chance. So, you know, they are at the end of their life. Ironically, they're still really comfortable, but as you can tell, you know, with this here on this one, and same thing happening at the toe on this one, as well as the stitching here on the left foot, and just the general wear and tear. There's really sort of, unfortunately, not much I can do to salvage these shoes anymore, but they've just been absolutely stunningly incredible, reliable, comfortable shoes that just are really versatile. So, I mean, after my 10-year love affair with these Docs, I was sort of hooked on the Doc Marten brand, and I was quite happy to shell out another $200 or whatever it was for another pair of leather boots, you know, thinking, well, if I got these used and they lasted me that long, imagine how long a new pair would get me. I probably got these in around, like, I want to say 2011, 2012, like roughly 5 years ago, in the States at an actual, like, official authorized Doc Marten reseller or whatever. And I think I actually got these at a Doc Marten store. I can't remember if it was a first party store or not, but they're the genuine made in the UK variety. So these ones are a little bit taller than the 8 eyelet versions, but just sort of the classic black Docs. You know, I love these boots. They were also really comfortable, and you know, I wore them hard. To be fair, I wore these really hard in the 5 years that I owned them, but compared to these, I really was not impressed with how these held up. So again, these I got used. I've owned them at least twice as long, and maybe 3 times as long as these. I wore these both, you know, back to back over the last 5 years, intermittently, and so just compare the tread to start with. Like, this tread was not thicker to start with. It just is that much, I guess, harder and that much sturdier. This tread's just completely worn down. In fact, at the heel here, you can see, I mean, it basically is just like I would get rocks and stuff stuck up into my heel because that one's full of mud, because there just is absolutely no tread left. And that actually became really hazardous. It was when I think I was wearing these on another film shoot in the snow, slipped on the ice and fell over with holding a $6,000 camera because I had no tread. And that's when I said, okay, screw it, and I went back to these because at least they still had tread. And that's what really did these ones in, wearing these around in the snow and in the rain. A few other issues with these boots compared to these that, you know, is a little bit on the disappointing side. Again, to be fair, I wore them hard. The other thing I will say is that I didn't treat these with anything special for kind of this black coating. This is the Needs for Oil. This is, I guess, Capo brand that I used to sort of treat both of these pairs of boots. It's pretty basic stuff. It's been recommended to me by numerous people for, you know, most people just use it on their work boots. Again, it does change the color quite a bit. So I guess, you know, a lot of people won't use it on Docs just for that reason alone. All I can say is it worked great on these boots. So I have no complaints with this Capo oil. I realized with the Docs that I probably should have used a special treatment for this sort of black coating that they have on there. And I know Doc Marten themselves will sell and or suggest certain treatments or polishes for this material. You know, when I was treating these boots, it was always just a basic clean and then Needs for Oil, and when they were in better shape, you know, I would just use like basic shoe polish. You know, I don't know whether I can attribute the wear and tear to that, but it does seem excessive, again, compared to these original boots. And you know, you would think that once this black coating has worn off, which sucks aesthetically, but you know, it doesn't really affect the boots capabilities, it doesn't affect their, the possibility of waterproofing them. It doesn't affect their comfort or their warmth or anything else. So, I expected that even if this wasn't maybe treating the areas that were a little more protected by the finish, it should be treating, the actual leather that would dry out or crack. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to have been the case. The areas that it did crack are the areas where it probably was more exposed to the neat's foot oil. So I don't know whether it's a different quality in the leather. I can't say what the cause is, but these have just worn down a lot faster than these older docks. So again, I got this brand new. After less than half the usage, I compared the soles already. These have actually cracked here, right around the bottom of the sole, and that's the leather cracking in this case, whereas here, it's actually the stitching and the leather's all still in one piece. Here the leather's cracked and I can stick my finger right through to the inside of the shoe there. Where else is that happening? That's on the right foot. On the left foot, it actually happened at the back of the shoe. Big gaping hole there. And just generally, I don't know if you can see, but like the cracking on the leather here and the cracking on the leather, at the toe, kind of the areas where it would have been bending and flexing the most, it's actually cracking at least as much as it is with these boots. It doesn't actually feel as stiff, it doesn't feel as dried out, and yet it's torn right through in several places, whereas this leather still isn't torn anywhere. You can see at the back here, that's not really a normal friction point. I don't know what happened there, but basically the whole top back of the sole of this, top portion ripped off on something. And also just this black coating, this actually started to wear off like this within a month of owning these shoes. But basically the first, time I scraped these on a rock, that black finish started to come right off. But I do think maybe having broken that surface contributed to them getting worn out quicker. I did actually write to Doc Martin about my experience with these boots compared to these, basically questioning if I was nuts or, are these things not really made like they used to be? They say that they're still made in England by hand, and that may well be true, but I can't help but question if they're using different materials, if they're cutting costs, cutting corners, or just if they're prioritizing looks over functionality, but I can't help but think that they're doing something differently to have, that different an experience with boots that, are very, very similar. When I wrote to Doc Martin, they basically said, send us pictures, we'll see what we can do. These did come with, I seem to think these technically have a lifetime warranty, but that's against, defects in workmanship, they would say, or, issues besides wear and tear, and they deemed this wear and tear. In fact, I think it was seeing how worn down the soles are that convinced them, not to offer to fix kind of the broken leather here. And, on the one hand, I can see that, they have to draw the line somewhere, but just the general wear and tear is sort of what I was, complaining about, because it just wasn't what I expected. I really would hope that I would be able to resole these boots at least once, but it's just not worth it. In fact, it's virtually impossible to repair something like this where the leather is broken right around the base of the shoe. I certainly still love the look of these, the form factor, and I would have stuck with Docs. In fact, I do plan on getting another pair of Docs, more just sort of as dress boots, I guess, or as a style choice. But in terms of working boots, I decided instead to try Red Wings. So I got these pair of Red Wings about a month ago. I debated a lot between these, the mock toes, and the other pair I was looking at was the Rangers. The Rangers is sort of the other most, I guess, classic and or popular of the kind of vintage styles. And it just has, instead of stitching and a separate piece of leather around the toe here, it's a more classic toe like this, except with a reinforcement, an extra piece of leather, and a thinner sole. The issue I had with the Rangers is that they didn't really have, they have like a wood and or cork sole, I believe, and on the bottom they don't have this level of tread. You know, I think that they are pretty grippy in normal circumstances, but again, I bought these knowing that I was going to be walking around in snow and ice, and you know, having broken somebody else's $6,000 camera, slipping in the ice in this, and also damaging my MacBook Pro, yeah, the same way, at a different fall. I decided that I should really prioritize tread. As well, you know, in terms of the look, I was sort of ambiguous. I like both of them for different reasons. You know, the form factor of these, I like. The color of these, I like. And these seemed, you know, in other ways, just a little more practical. I haven't oiled them yet. I didn't have the oil. I didn't want to need to put oil on them just because I know Red Wing suggested something else. So I did pick up their own boot oil. I have sort of wiped these down a few times, but as you can see, they're already showing some signs of wear and are a little grubby. So I'm going to wipe these down again and apply the original boot oil, Red Wing's own boot oil, and basically just sort of see if it changes the color. And as I do that, I'm going to go over them and sort of show you what I like about them and some of the points of wear just in this first month of ownership. So I've been wearing these virtually every day, again in mixed conditions, snow, rain. Now it's sunny. I've been hiking in these. I'm going to be cleaning these with an old sock today, just because I'm keeping it classy like that. So you just have a damp rag, lukewarm water I would use, nothing like scorching hot. Just trying to kind of get the dirt and dust out of all the little nooks and crannies so that you know that the oil will actually take to the boot and not just sort of sit on the surface. And obviously as well, because you know, along with all that dust and dirt and stuff that's not really harmful to the leather, you know, there might be salts or, you know, chemicals or other things that, you know, if it sticks on the leather long enough, could dry it out, could damage it in other ways. When I was breaking these boots in, you know, the break-in period for these Red Wings is actually, you know, it wasn't particularly long, but it was frankly brutal compared to the Docs. Like right off the bat, these were really comfy. These were comfy in the store, and then, you know, for the next few days of wearing them, I couldn't really wear them more than, you know, a few hours each day. For me, it was this piece around the ankle would just really pinch. It wasn't tight, again, like in the store, it felt perfectly comfy, but I found that when my ankle was kind of, I guess just the way it sat in there, instead of like just sliding in and out, it would actually sort of catch on the edge, because this is reinforced and quite stiff, and dig into my ankles, the back of my ankles, especially on my right foot for some reason. And it got to a point where I was actually like, my ankle was bleeding. So that's when I knew I had to take a little break from these and then just sort of gradually, you know, break them in day by day. I actually was pretty concerned at some point that, you know, I might have made a horrible mistake and wasn't gonna, you know, they would just never be comfy. But they did actually break in after a while, and they've been really comfortable ever since. Right away, what I'm noticing in terms of wear points, the soles have held up really well. I always wear out the back first, so that's sort of what I'm looking at. But in terms of the tread depth, I don't think this is really any different than when I got them, which I was sort of concerned about because it's quite soft rubber, and I know that those do tend to wear out pretty quickly. Of course, you can resole these, but you know, it can be a bit pricey. The nice thing is you can resole them with whatever you want. So for me, I'll probably just do a harder rubber if I could get something like this sole that's just lasted forever, unless I'm pleasantly surprised by how long these soles last, and then I'll just get these again. The one point of wear that I do notice, which, you know, I don't know whether or not it's actually an issue, but it's I'm a little bit surprised at how quickly this is sort of breaking along the sort of edge where these two pieces of leather meet around the toe. And again, I was sort of concerned with getting these over the Rangers because of this stitching and just this extra piece of leather. I thought, you know, that might be a weak point for the boots, but I did talk to a lot of people and asked around and basically came to the conclusion that it's not an issue. And obviously this isn't affecting the stitching here. You know, there's no weakness in the stitching, it's just that where, you know, I sort of bent this toe back, I guess the glue or whatever is holding these two pieces of leather together above the stitching has split in a few places. And at the front here, it's sort of smushed together. You know, that tells me that that's not really an integral part of the design at all. But I do wonder whether with those two kind of strips of leather separated, if water can get into the stitching a little bit more than it would otherwise. And cosmetically, if that was a big deal for you, that you really liked the clean kind of look of the leather, you know, when these were new, that might be a little bit disappointing to see that they sort of split around the stitching there. Something that's kind of neat with these boots, again, it might be an issue for some people cosmetically. I myself like it, but you can just see how many kind of colors this leather carries depending on the area, the wear, the polish, the moisture content. So I just let these dry for a while after wiping them down, and I'm going to apply some oil, and then we'll check in on them again, I guess tomorrow night after I've worn them for a day, and just kind of see if the color has changed or kind of gone back to the way it was after they dry again. I will say in general, these boots were maybe slightly more expensive than the Docks. It's hard for me to compare because the Docks were a few years ago, but also in American dollars, whereas these I bought in Canada. There's almost no runoff because it's just absorbed it all. It does say here on the instructions that you might find kind of there's excess oil even after a day of it drying, so they suggest kind of giving it another wipe after 24 hours. I don't think you're required to put oil on it right after you buy it, obviously, but I do think they kind of give the boot a bit of a different process. I don't think that they've just coated it in oil, probably because the color, you know, it's just going to be that much different from kind of the untreated leather, and people will have different tastes in terms of how they, you know, prefer to treat the leather. So I don't think I would use quite this much oil every time I do this, but since it's the first time, I just want to really make sure that this leather is happy. Wow, it's quite a difference, eh? So I'm still gonna kind of finish this up a bit, but just for comparison there, this is with oil applied and this is without oil. The oil has not dried, the excess oil hasn't been wiped off, so this might get quite a bit lighter, but I'm guessing it's going to be pretty similar to this tomorrow, even after I've wiped off any excess oil. Hey guys, so it's actually a couple days later. Didn't get a chance to make a video the day after I put some boot oil on these. Quite a notable patina on here already. This is a good comparison actually, if you can see this, you know, right here. Versus, you know, this is basically just what the leather would look like treated, and this is, you know, what it looks like with some wear, having been cleaned and treated a couple times. These have been really quite surprisingly waterproof without, you know, applying any additional waterproofing or oil until now as well. So obviously the jury's still out when it comes to Docks versus Red Wings. Too early to tell for me with just a month of ownership on these. But I'm optimistic that, you know, this was a solid purchase, and so far I'm really happy with them. And obviously I'll bring you guys an update as I get further on into my ownership of these boots. But if you're looking to buy these to wear them, to work in them, to just have a really good, practical, all-weather, kind of all conditions, versatile pair of boots, definitely so far these get my thumbs up. So there you go guys, that's sort of a review of these boots that I've had over the last 10 years or so collectively. Hope it was helpful in some way. Let me know if there's anything else in particular in depth that you'd like more info on. Hopefully this has helped you kind of make a decision if you're considering buying any of these shoes. Again, I hate to knock Doc Martens. I think it's sort of more a shoe that people choose for cosmetic or aesthetic reasons, for fashion reasons, whatever. And for that, I mean, you know, these again have held up pretty darn well. Well worth the money invested. and it's too early to say whether the Red Wings will hold up any better. I think it's fair to say, they don't make boots like they used to, one way or the other. But I would say these are both great choices for you depending on your tastes and your expectations.